It's May 1951 and the Korean War has been raging for a year. The world is still weary from the ravages of World War II, and the United States is the only nation capable of leading a UN response to the attempts by the Communist North to seize South Korea and unify the peninsula by force. The conflict has set the stage for a defining age in human history, the Cold War, and soon a regiment of American soldiers will find that curious visitors from another world may also be interested in how this war plays out. The Americans are 60 miles north of Seoul. The jungle is thick and oppressively hot. The North Koreans have been pushed back from South Korea in a brilliant pincer movement carried out by US forces. Rather than risk being destroyed completely, North Korea forces quickly retreated into the north, as US-led NATO troops attempted to encircle them with an amphibious landing in the north. Despite these military successes though, the troops are nervous. At every sunrise, every man on the front lines has one question on their lips. Have the Soviets joined the war? Have we finally started World War III? Private First Class Francis P. Wall and his platoon are providing security for an detachment of artillery, which is itself preparing to rain down fire on a village full of North Korean forces. Men watch the jungle around them cautiously, despite being a few miles from the official front. Raiding parties against the American artillery are not uncommon. The artillery is set to fire just before dawn, and the villagers below have all been warned of the impending attack and told to flee. As the hour approaches, the big guns begin opening up. Artillery shells whiz through the air, bursting just above the village and showering the North Korean troops below with deadly shrapnel. The thunderous booms echo across the hills as a dozen guns open up one by one and deliver death to the enemy. Suddenly, though, Private Wall and other men responsible for providing security for the artillery sees something in the hills above the village. It seems that the bombardment has attracted the attention of something none of the men will ever be able to explain. The light is dim at first, but quickly grows in brightness as it moves down the jungle hill. To the Americans, it appears like a floating jack-o'-lantern, emitting some kind of light from its body that is at first orange in color. To their shock, the light moves just over the village, even as the American artillery continues to pour fire into it. The air-bursting shells detonate all around it, and then the light does something incredible. In a move that defies all known physics, the light is able to rapidly move to the side of an exploding shell, avoiding being directly hit by the rounds. Even avoiding a direct hit, the object, which by now the men know must be some sort of craft, must have some sort of protective shielding, as it's still being showered by frag from the exploding artillery shells. Even if it is receiving any damage though, the Americans on the ground are unable to tell and simply watch in awe for almost an hour as the craft weathers the bombardment of the village. Then, the craft turns its sights on the Americans. With no warning, the craft turns in place and now moves directly toward the American position. The men are nervous. Nothing in their training has prepared them for this. Is it a secret Soviet craft, perhaps based on stolen Nazi technology? The speculation runs wild as the men prepare for what might be an attack on their position. Private Wall asks his company commander for permission to fire on the object as it approaches, using his M1 rifle loaded with armor-piercing rounds. His company commander agrees, and as the object approaches, still bathed in orange light, Wall and his squad mates open up. Their fire is accurate and the craft comes under fire from several rifles. If the craft was employing some sort of protective shielding against the artillery shrapnel blast, it must have dropped it because the men are able to clearly hear the metallic sides of the craft ringing out from the sounds of their bullets striking it. As the men fire, a few of the armor-piercing rounds must have found their mark, piercing the strange craft. Suddenly, the craft goes wild. The lights begin flickering on and off erratically, and the craft makes crazy sporadic movements from side to side. At one point though, the craft remains floating in the air above the GIs. The lights go completely off, but then seems to flicker back to life. The Americans on the ground, worried that the craft is going to either explode or come crashing down on their heads. Then, the craft seems to regain its stability, and suddenly the mountain valley is filled with the unbearable sound of what seem to be dozens of diesel train locomotives starting up all at once. The craft begins pulsing bluish light and attacks the soldiers below. As the men watch helplessly, the craft sweeps a ray across the battlefield below it. The brightly colored ray seems to come in pulses that the men can only see when it sweeps directly over them. Like car headlights or a searchlight in the dark, the craft sweeps this ray across the ground below it, seeking out soldiers where they lay in their fighting positions. As it sweeps over each man, they're racked with a burning, tingling sensation all over their flesh. The company commander immediately shouts for his men to take shelter from their bunkers, small dugouts reinforced with plywood and sandbags. The bunkers offer protection for their men from the artillery bombardments, and the soldiers dive below the ground to take shelter from the mysterious ray. From inside these bunkers, the soldiers are able to watch the craft through small peepholes. Some of them even start returning fire from small firing slits. The craft suddenly blasts the entire area with a bright light, turning night into day briefly. Perhaps frustrated by the men safely out of its grasp in their bunkers, the craft then pulses with light once more and without warning shoots off at a 45-degree angle. To the astonishment of Private Wall, the craft seems to fly off at impossible speed, quickly being lost to the starry night sky. Lingering in their bunkers, it's a few minutes before the men work up the courage to leave the safety they offer. The company commander quickly calls for a meeting, and to a man, the soldiers all agree on one thing: they aren't telling a soul about what they just experienced. While each day the company is expected to file a report on its activities for the day, the company commander agrees it's best to leave this one off the books for now, for fear that they'll all be thought of as crazy. At the time, there's no such thing as UFOs in the public consciousness, and while mysterious stories of World War II Foo Fighters circulate through the military, nobody has yet made the link between their appearances and otherworldly alien visitors. Better then to keep everyone's mouth shut so they don't end up locked up in the loony bin. However, a few days later, the men of the 25th Infantry Division, 27th Regiment, 2nd Battalion, Easy Company start to fall ill. They're nauseous, they have terrible headaches and diarrhea. So many of them are affected at once that the army has to cut a road through the jungle to send ambulances and evacuate many of them. When doctors examine them, they find the men have extremely high counts of white blood cells and seem to be suffering from dysentery. After the war, Private Wall would struggle with PTSD and drop from 180 pounds to 136. The weight loss would be permanent, and the private would struggle all his life with weight issues as he struggled to recover to his normal weight. An official explanation for the event was never given, and with no official report filed, an investigation was never conducted. Whatever the men saw that night in Korea, though, was not a one-time incident, as GIs all across the conflict would tell very similar stories. For years, the mysterious craft are thought to possibly be Soviet secret weapons, but when those weapons never materialized in Soviet arsenals, the men involved would be forced to look for more otherworldly explanations. As the Cold War came to an end, it was revealed that on the other side of the Iron Curtain, the Soviets were also encountering strange alien craft. Some even allege that the Soviet military had been involved in a conflict with underwater alien beings. According to allegedly secret documents leaked by former Soviet intelligence officials turned whistleblowers, military divers encountered a strange being in a silvery diving suit with a bubble-like helmet. When they returned to the area later to try and capture it with a net, the divers were forcibly sent upwards toward the surface by an invisible force. Their quick ascension from 50 meters down gave many of the men the bends. However, others argue that UFO sightings in wartime in Korea or even during the Cold War were nothing more than simply the effects of severe stress on the human brain, with both sides acutely aware that a full-scale global war could erupt at any time. Plus, with the stress of normal combat, the mind may play tricks on some people, even creating outright hallucinations. Plus, as some have pointed out, the symptoms that Private Well described are similar to regular dysentery. Whatever the truth is, wartime UFO sightings are nothing new, and the Korean War is seen by many as the floodgate opening up to what would become a full-blown alien incursion of planet Earth. Perhaps this isn't as surprising as it might seem, though. After all, this was just years after the United States developed a working nuclear weapon, propelling humanity into the atomic age. And shortly after, the world found itself in the grip of a potentially civilization-destroying Cold War. Could aliens have been interested in how this part of human history played out? If reports from Korea are true, the answer may be a very frightful yes. Want to hear more about paranormal wartime sightings? Then check out our other videos on the creatures that stalked American troops in Vietnam, and soldiers encounter mysterious monsters in Vietnam War. Or maybe you prefer this video instead. Either way, click one now before the Zeti reticulans come for all of our brains.